Have you ever wondered why some projects succeed while others fail, despite the best planning efforts? The answer often lies in risk analysis. This is a critical process in project management that helps us predict and tackle potential pitfalls that could derail our project objectives. It is the art of foreseeing the unexpected and the science of devising effective strategies to mitigate them. Risk analysis is not a one-off activity, but a continuous process that unfolds in 5 key steps. First, we have risk identification, where we brainstorm and document potential risks. Next, we assess these risks, considering their probability and impact. Then, we apply different risk analysis techniques, which could be either qualitative or quantitative. After that comes risk response planning, where we decide how to deal with each identified risk. Lastly, we prepare contingency plans, our safety nets in case things don't go as expected. So let's dive into these steps and understand each one of them in detail. The first step in risk analysis is risk identification. So let's dive into what that entails. Risk identification is a process where we uncover, recognize, and describe risks that might affect the outcomes of a project. It's like a detective's investigation, where we examine every aspect of the project to find potential threats and opportunities. Let's start with brainstorming. This is where we gather all project stakeholders and encourage them to think creatively, to explore every nook and cranny of the project for potential risks. This could be anything from changes in regulations to technological glitches, to team members falling ill. The goal is to leave no stone unturned. Checklists can be a great tool in this process. Think of them as your treasure map, guiding you through common risks that have been encountered in past projects or are typically relevant to your industry. These could be based on historical data, lessons learned, or even industry standard lists. The point is, you're not starting from scratch. You're building on the collective wisdom of those who've walked this path before you. Once we've identified potential risks, we need to document them. This is where a risk register comes into play. It's a comprehensive log of all identified risks, including their descriptions, categories, root causes, and potential impacts. This organized record ensures that no risk gets lost in the shuffle and provides a reference point for risk assessment and response planning. But here's the thing, risk identification isn't a one-off activity. It's an ongoing process that needs to be revisited throughout the project lifecycle. As the project evolves, new risks might emerge and existing ones might change or even disappear. So staying vigilant and proactive in risk identification is crucial. In closing, risk identification forms the foundation of risk analysis. It sets the stage for assessing and responding to risks, ultimately steering the project towards its objectives. So remember this: a risk not identified is a risk not managed. Let's make sure we manage them all. Once we've identified the risks, the next step is risk assessment. Risk assessment is an essential process where we evaluate the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. It's like looking at the weather forecast before planning a picnic. You can't change the weather, but you can certainly prepare for it. Let's start with risk probability. It's about asking, what are the chances of this risk occurring? We evaluate this using either qualitative or quantitative scales. Think of it as estimating the chance of rain for our picnic. It might be a drizzle, a downpour, or it could stay sunny all day. Next, we consider the risk impact. If the risk event happens, what could be the potential fallout? For our picnic, a drizzle might just dampen the spirits, while a downpour could wash it out completely. In project terms, this could mean schedule delays, cost overruns, or even loss of stakeholder confidence. It's all about understanding the potential consequences. Once we've evaluated the probability and impact, it's time to prioritize. Not all risks are created equal. Some are like clouds on a sunny day, barely noticeable. Others are more like thunderstorms, demanding immediate attention. Risk prioritization helps us focus our resources and efforts on the most significant threats and opportunities. Here's where the interplay of objectivity and subjectivity comes into the picture. Objective assessment is about hard facts and data. It's like saying, the weather forecast predicts an 80% chance of rain. Subjective assessment, on the other hand, is based on experience and intuition. It's like saying, looking at those clouds, I think we should pack an umbrella. Remember, risk assessment is not about having a crystal ball to predict the future. We can't foresee every rain cloud or sunshine. But what we can do is prepare ourselves. We can pack an umbrella for the rain or a hat for the sun. In the context of project management, we can develop strategies to mitigate risks or capitalize on opportunities. The goal of risk assessment is not to predict the future, but to prepare for it. Because after all, being prepared is half the battle won. With the risks assessed, we now move on to risk analysis techniques. Risk analysis techniques are the tools we use to understand and quantify risks. They help us make informed decisions rather than relying on guesswork. Let's delve deeper into these. First up, we have qualitative analysis, a method that relies heavily on experience and expertise. It's a subjective evaluation of risks, where we use tools like risk matrices, risk scoring, or risk categorization. These help us gauge the potential impact and likelihood of each risk using descriptive scales. For instance, a risk might be categorized as high, medium, or low based on its potential impact and likelihood. This approach is particularly useful when numerical data is scarce or when the project environment is highly uncertain. Next, we have quantitative analysis. This is the numerical counterpart to qualitative analysis. Here, we use statistical methods to assess risks. Techniques like Monte Carlo simulation, sensitivity analysis, or decision trees come in handy. These methods provide us with a more objective and precise understanding of risk, translating uncertainty into measurable impacts on project objectives. For example, a Monte Carlo simulation could help us estimate the probability of a project exceeding its budget or missing its deadline. Lastly, we have scenario analysis. This technique involves considering different scenarios or outcomes of potential risks. It helps us understand their implications on project performance and decision-making. By exploring various what-if scenarios, we can anticipate potential impacts and devise appropriate response strategies. For instance, we might explore the consequences of a key supplier failing to deliver materials on time, or the impact of a sudden change in regulatory requirements. Each of these techniques serves a unique purpose and is best suited to different project contexts or risk profiles. By applying them judiciously, we can gain a comprehensive understanding of our risks, helping us to better manage uncertainty and enhance project success. Effective risk analysis helps us make informed decisions rather than relying on guesswork. Having analyzed the risks, we now need to plan our responses. And that's where risk response planning comes into play. It's like creating your own personalized map to navigate through the tumultuous seas of project uncertainties. Let's start with risk mitigation. This is about reducing the probability or impact of a risk. Imagine you're planning a picnic and there's a chance of rain. You might choose to hold the picnic in a place that has indoor facilities. That's mitigation, taking proactive steps to lessen the negative impact of a potential risk. Next, we have risk transfer. This is when we shift the burden of a risk to a third party. Think of it like buying an insurance policy. If something goes wrong, the insurance company bears the cost. In a project context, this could mean outsourcing a complex task to a specialized firm that's better equipped to handle it. Then there's risk acceptance. Sometimes it's not practical or cost-effective to mitigate or transfer a risk. In those cases, we might choose to simply accept it. This doesn't mean ignoring the risk, but rather acknowledging it and being prepared to deal with its potential impact. It's like choosing to hold your picnic outdoors even though there's a chance of rain, but packing some umbrellas just in case. Finally, we have risk avoidance. This involves changing the project plan to eliminate the risk altogether. It's like deciding not to have a picnic at all if there's a high chance of a thunderstorm. In project terms, this could mean choosing a different technology or approach that doesn't carry the same level of risk. But remember, each of these strategies requires both strategic and tactical planning. It's not just about choosing a response, but also about detailing the how, when, and who of implementing that response. So, there you have it. Risk response planning is about developing and deploying strategies to handle potential risks. It's about turning threats into opportunities and ensuring that your project sails smoothly towards its destination. Remember, a good risk response plan turns threats into opportunities. Finally, we come to contingency planning. This is the safety net of every project designed to catch us if we fall. It starts with risk response plans, which detail specific actions, responsibilities, and timelines for managing identified risks. These plans also encompass trigger points that activate contingency measures when certain conditions are met. Next, we have contingency reserves. These are buffers of time, budget, or resources set aside to tackle unforeseen risks and their impacts. They serve as a cushion, allowing us to absorb shocks without derailing the project. Then there are fallback plans, our plan B, or even C if the primary risk responses prove ineffective. They represent alternative courses of action we can turn to when faced with unexpected obstacles. This triad of contingency planning underlines the importance of flexibility and resilience in managing project risks. It's about staying agile, being ready to pivot when necessary, and always having a backup plan in place. So, that's risk analysis in project management. It's all about foreseeing, preparing, and responding effectively to potential risks.